We are now, exactly. Here we are small talking on the internet. Welcome back. This is our first panel. We're going to talk about Nordic Green Startups with a focus on the Nordic Eco System and how we, the strengths, weaknesses, the differences between the 5 countries up here. Even though we're small countries, we've got a surprising number of differences. And then also the strengths, let's see, and the things that we bring together when we work together. To talk about this, from the left, we've got Thomas Canguilhem, who is the CEO of EcoTree. And I'll give you guys each a minute just to explain what you do in a second, but just a minute. Followed by Yasemin, Arhan Modéer.
Yes.
From Altitude Meetings from Sweden. Kim Balle from here in Copenhagen with EXO Company. And Clara Norell from Nordic Company.
Yes.
Which I was rather pleased with the pronunciation of. Also a board member of the Swedish Industrial Hemp Association.
Yes.
Which is a nice mouthful. And then, as before, I'm Nick Hawtin, CEO of ThinkLegalTech. Cool. So we could just get a quick words. All right, so hemp. I'm guessing this is something to do with the plant.
The plant, yes.
All right, and what do you guys do?
So we work with the EU-certified industrial hemp, and that's an agricultural crop and industrial plant. So from the seeds, you can make food in terms of peeled seeds, cold-pressed oil that contains omega-3, 6, and 9, and then you have the press cake and the protein that can go up to 50% plant-based protein. And then if you look at the stem, that's the fiber, and the fiber is a very, very interesting material, biomaterial that can provide products for the textile industry, the building industry, the furniture industry, the plastic, the biofuels.
Just make rope out of it, right? For
ropes.
Viking ships back in the day. All right,
Yes.
cool. Kim, I know you from countless startup awards. You haven't held it in space, but otherwise you've held it on most continents except for Antarctica, right?
Something like that. But actually, we also have a project now in the Arctic. But basically, EXO Company is about connecting innovation ecosystems with corporates and governments. And how do we do that? We do that by creating brands. And everything started with one of the brands, which was a community thing. It was the Nordic Startup Awards. And that has transformed into Global Startup Awards. And this has been 8 years now. And now we're actually in 10 regions covering 105 countries. And the Nordic is just one region. Then we have 4 in Africa. We have South Europe, Central Europe, and then we have Eurasia, which is the bridge between the Europe and the Asia, obviously. And we have 3 things that is part of this concept. Is that one thing is that we create quantitative networks through the competition, which is run by our proprietary software. And then secondly, and maybe most importantly, is that we also collect data from these regions, which is quite interesting, both for our partners, the corporates and the governments, but also just to understand what's going on in different parts of the world. If you take the Nordic is a very transparent place. It's a place that is safe. It's a place when people tell you something, you can trust it. But if you go to Africa, if you go to Southeast Asia, it's quite different. So the fact that we have this brand that is rooted in a qualitative network where people believe in the brand, it gives us access to unique insights of what's going on. So that's pretty the concept of EXO Company. And we have made that concept in a way so we create new brands. So we have the Arctic Future Challenge, which we do with the Foreign Ministry of Denmark. So it's kind of the same thinking, but you have a different agenda. Here it's about creating qualitative networks around the youth in the Arctic that are actually engaged with innovation, but also importantly, the ecosystem that supports it. So what businessman in Greenland is actually investing in the youth? Because in these places, there are not so much, organized support, but we want to find the individuals that really want to make a difference there. So EXO Company is using this kind of model in different concepts.
Cool. I couldn't help but smile because I was looking past you. You said, so people trust us up here in the north, and Yasemin is from Sweden, and she was laughing at me because we're from Denmark.
Everyone in the Nordic countries?
Yeah, the Swedes are always like, the Danes, they're shifty businessmen. Cool. What do you do at altitude?
Actually, on paper, we are doing conferences and meetings, but it's not the meeting as such that's our main goal. We are actually a company striving to make the world a bit better around all kinds of sustainability questions. We're working a lot with climate and a lot with social sustainability. And we are doing it through the media or the tool meetings, actually. And we are running one company called The Bridge, where we're actually trying to bridge science around material science and life science with new business models, because that's one of the tricks to actually find long-term sustainable solutions to the global challenges we have. So we're working very closely to ESS and Max4, the huge research facilities outside Lund, and we are working as well with something we initiated last year, which is a part of a Nordic initiative called Impact Startup, which is an accelerator for companies that have impact first. But we are working a lot to help those companies to grow and be both scalable and investable. All right. So that's what we do.
Cool.
So our main force is to make a difference in different ways.
Super. So we got one company that's got a product that's trying to change the world. You're building networks and connecting the world. You're doing something, you're doing it on a global scale, you're doing it on a regional scale. Thomas, EcoTree.
And we try to do it out in the woods.
What's that?
We are basically, we do something very simple but vital. We plant trees. But we do it in a new and groundbreaking way, which is that it's not donation-based, as most of the initiatives today, but it's, we put some financial incentive in it. So basically, we let anyone, any individual, any companies, buy newly planted trees from our own forest in the heart of Europe. So that goes with all the climate benefit of planting trees and growing forests. But it also means that ultimately, when we cut their trees as part of our forestry management, each tree owner gets 100% of that revenue, which means that they will basically double or even triple their investment over the years. So again, we try to leverage the financial incentive to get more and more people into tree planting.
So it's a bit like Yasemin was talking about before, there's sort of a business model innovation angle to planting trees.
Absolutely. We are leveraging a legal trick and basically have digitalized and democratized tree planting, because now, as I said, anyone in a few clicks and for as low as 15 euro can actually acquire one tree by the unit. And that's fairly new, and that hopefully enables anyone to engage.
Cool.
A really cool idea.
Yeah, because you guys are crazy about trees in Sweden.
We are crazy about them everywhere, actually. We want them to grow everywhere. But actually, I mean, talking about the business model, I just want to get back to that, because why today, first of all, we have a business models and that are based on something that was actually the reality in the end of the 1800s, you know? That's first, the biggest problem, I would say. And the second one, and of course in that, is that why is a tree more worth when we have chopped it down than it is when it's up and live? And that is just one part of what the problems are. And if we can understand the worth, the value of things that's actually working, then we will have a business that's worth in the sustainable world. So, totally.
I got to admit, funny that two of you should be standing next to each other, because this is a perfect example of the Nordics in action. And let's see, and the differences between the country and how the historical roots, let's say, that Sweden is an enormous place, and that you didn't have great farmland, and so when the country industrialized, an awful lot of farms were kind of abandoned and went back to being forests, with a result that there's a very large portion of the Swedish population actually owns a piece of forest, just because they've inherited it. And the thing is, some of this inherited stuff is part of the differences between our countries. That Denmark is known for trading. We're a lot of small islands. We've, as a result, always had a lot of ships and always done a lot of trading. Sweden builds stuff. And when we look at startups, we tend to say that, the Swedes build big companies and the Danes are always looking for the fast deal. How do you see this beyond the jokes about whether or not Danes are very flexible about written contracts? How do you see this playing out in differences across the region? Anyone could jump in.
Yeah, we focus here in Sweden, and but we actually we are 7 co-founders, and 3 of us are Danish, and 4 are Swedish. So we have an interesting culture within the company.
And is that because it's the region? Because one of the things people watching might not know is that Sweden is 30 minutes away from where we're standing.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a bridge. We're very close, small countries.
And actually, one of our hemp fields is on the field where one of the last battles between Denmark and Sweden was held. So on one side of the field is the old Sweden, and on one side of the field is the old Copenhagen, and that was the battle.
That was like 400 years ago, though. So I mean, it's been a while, right? Okay.
But we really love the story around this. As we are focusing on Sweden, but when we look at hemp, as that's what I'm representing, Denmark is very much further ahead in all ways. So, for example, there was a university with a doctor called Bodil Balle the other week receiving 14 million Danish krona for a hemp fiber textile innovation project. And if we look at Sweden and the investment, and when we apply for funds for hemp innovations, then it's a little bit more, it's a stigma, it's a little bit of anxiety, or a suspicion against this plant, whereas in Denmark it's like
because there are other things that you can use this plant for.
The industrial plant you can only use as a food, clothes, and shelter.
All right, okay.
So it's
something I didn't know.
That's very important for me to say,
yeah.
maybe, that that's what I'm working with.
Because I was going to say, here in Copenhagen, we're known for selling an awful lot of the other, yes, all right. But, cool. Well, Kim, I mean, you back and forth, the Nordic Startup Awards, you've got years of data on the differences and the similarities. What do you see?
But I think you're right that when you want to make one headline, Sweden is very good at building big companies, but I also think it depends on what industries you're talking about. Nordic Startup Awards specific is about startups and it's about high growth startups. And when you're talking about high growth, you also talk about technology. And here we have to say that Sweden are doing really well. If you look at the numbers, they have way more exits, they have way more unicorns than any other Nordic countries by far. But the interesting thing about when we talk about Nordic, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, when you travel to Africa, or you travel to Malaysia, or you are in Delhi, and you're saying, I'm from Denmark, then they don't really see the difference between Denmark and Sweden. And I think that's also part of this Nordic conversation, is that I think when we talk about the Nordic, we have to talk about collaboration in the Nordic, and here I think it's okay also to be thinking about the differences and also think about success for the specific country. But I think as a marketing vehicle, I think the Nordic is really powerful when you go out in the world. Because you don't want to over-explain things. But if you come to Asia and you want to promote your product and or service, you can say, this is Nordic design. We come from the Nordic developed society where you can trust each other. And already there you have credibility and you don't have to explain that much. But I think you're right that Sweden is good builders. And you are making a parallel that we are good Vikings almost. We have the ships. Yeah. But I think also the Nordic, if you take the tech startup scene, each ecosystem has developed a lot since I started really working within this field. And I think the other ecosystems are also getting up there now.
Interesting.
Thomas, now your Canguilhem is not a traditional Danish or Nordic last name. So, I mean, you come from somewhere else. And, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'm half French, half Austrian. Danish by adoption, I could say. So I guess I fit pretty well into this EU panel today. But indeed, I have let's say, an outsider view when it comes to the Nordics. Two things, and I remember this quote, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Scandinavian countries are like 4% of the European population, but they account 50% of the unicorns. And that says a lot about how active and talentful the Nordic tech scene is. And I always, so my analysis is that I think it's based on two things, at least from my point of view, coming from more South Europe. I think you have this genuine pragmatism in the Nordic culture that basically, makes it super efficient and no big ideas, just whatever works, works, what doesn't work, throw it out and move on. And I think this mindset is also in the ADN of startups. larger corporations, they manage, usually, I think they try to use the best resources to build the perfect solution, which is why we have crazy computers, cars, and planes. While I think startups, they try to, they're usually struggling with very scarce resources, except the ones that raise funds, but not all of them do that. So they have this need for frugal innovation. And I think that mindset is both a very Nordic mindset and a very startup mindset, which, my point of view, explains why startups and the tech scene is so active here. And then, of course, maybe the second aspect is that we're talking about smaller countries, so there is, again, a genuine need to expand outside of the domestic market. And the Vikings knew that before me.
Sure.
So I think that, and the digital world is the best leverage to scale and expand internationally. So again, here I think we have a very good fit between the tech scene and the Nordic areas.
If we tie this now back into, so we've talked big picture, the Nordics, but I mean, today we're here, sustainability, and you've been in on it, and your impact focus. And I don't know, I've traveled, I've only lived here for 20 years, but I can remember before coming here, where just going to the supermarket and seeing how many organic products there were way before, we've moved into the organics, we've moved into sustainability. Denmark's been building windmills forever. Norway and Sweden have been getting their power from water power for forever. Hydro is a big thing. This impact thing, we've got a big piece of trust. Is that the biggest thing maybe? Is the track record or the perception, or are there other things?
For the Nordics?
From the Nordics as a strength?
Yeah, but I think, as you said, that we have a very good reputation and we are out there being the Nordics. But I do believe that we can do better, and especially now that we don't have that much time, we need to act now. And I think if we just look at the Nordics particularly, I think there is a lot that we can learn from each other and just not end up focusing on the differences, but actually learn from, for example, Swedes do need to learn more about sales. They don't sell, they wait until I don't know when. We need impact now, and we have to do it fast. And I think we could, with being a little bit more open and actually working together, also to get the investors to invest in those potential unicorns that's not necessarily tech. We have a lot of them. But if you look today, it's Stockholm, Copenhagen, maybe Oslo and Helsingfors. They are not coming over to the southern parts of Sweden, for example. I mean, it could be investors from Copenhagen or Nordics, because they go to Stockholm. And I think there's so much more going on in the different parts of the countries that we need to look on and actually raise awareness of, because we already are really in the forefront around a lot of sustainability solutions, but we need to get them scalable, because otherwise it won't make any difference. I mean, we need to grow a lot of trees, to make a lot. So we need to get out this great.
Continue.
Everyone should invest here. I'm not getting paid. No.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
See, one of the things, you're absolutely right about sales. I mean, I come from London and New York, and coming to from New York, let's say, to Denmark, to the Nordics, there are a couple of things that the Nordics could learn about sales. Now, I think there are some examples already. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, another traditional Swedish name, but he is not shy about promoting himself and does fantastic things. And I mean, there is also a switch. The Swedes, once you turn the Swedes, they are good salespeople. And there's a couple of these sustainable impact and sustainability things that we are really, really good at up here. Something I saw a couple of years ago, I was at an event and happened to speak to a Chinese gentleman that was standing next to me, and he had just opened a milk powder plant in Denmark so that he could double the production of organic milk powder, because China has an enormous appetite for a variety of reasons, including a couple of scandals, for organic milk powder from this region. Trust, super high, super interested in.
Great.
And there was investment that was willing to come in here. I was thinking, in your industry, you've got to see a couple of big successes that you can build on. Well, this sustainability angle.
Yeah, we see, I mean, this is really something that is coming all over the planet now. It's something that is new. I mean, we have used this plant for thousands of years, but the industry is starting to wake up now. We can see that in the tracks and traces from COVID and Corona that we need to stand stronger as a country, but we also need to collaborate because the knowledge around how to work with this plant is kind of forgotten.
So a couple of examples, because you had a really good one about how let's say the Danish government was investing more money into hemp than the Swedes, and then because we are so close, you were able to leverage Danish investment into Swedish fields, formerly Danish fields, but that, that there was an example of some collaboration. I was thinking of similar collaborations across the borders.
I mean, there is an amazing collaboration between Denmark and Sweden also around industrial hemp becoming a drone, like the flying drones, because you can make so many amazing products of this fiber. It's very strong. You can make cars, you can make drones, you can make... 21% of Tesla is industrial hemp. So we see on the global scale and in American investments, I was speaking to an American investor yesterday because they are calling to see what's up, what's happening in Sweden.
So you're talking about using hemp to replace plastic and steel?
Yes, not steel, but maybe steel-looking materials like a drone, yeah.
Okay, or like the bumpers on cars aren't made of metal anymore, but it looks like the rest of the car.
Or like the house. You can build a house like this out of hemp lime. You just mix hemp, water, and lime, and then you can spray your house like this on a very, very short time.
The numbers on the interest in sustainability, impact investments, what do we see in terms of that over the last... You've got all this data.
I think a good example of the mindset of the Nordic, which we hopefully could spread to the rest of the world, is also an investment fund like Norsk, which is a really good example of someone taking initiative and are not afraid to invest in something that is not textbook. Because also, as you mentioned, it's about how you see the world. What do you value? And for a lot of investment, like any other industry, it's like there's a playbook. This work, and at the end of the day, it's about how many X's do you get out. But it doesn't mean that if you are innovative and brave, you can create an investment fund that don't use a textbook, but make a new textbook. And maybe you could even get the same amount of X's out, or you could get less. But you also have to have a long-term perspective on the world that we live in. And I think most people, they are thinking about the future now. It's not... I can give you a good example. The Arctic Future Challenge was launched at the Arctic Circle Conference, which is a political conference in Reykjavik once a year. And what I realized at that conference, that all of these politicians, there was the oil minister of Russia and all these kind of people, they were not talking about if the Arctic is melting. The conversation was, when it melts, what do we do? And that was actually quite shocking to me, because I was thinking, if everyone knows that it's melting, and we're talking about the world leaders, or the leaders that are involved in the Arctic in one way or the other, even the Chinese was there, actually, then, that should kind of push forward. And I think Norsk is a good example of the mindset of the Nordic. It's Sweden, again, but I think it's a good example of something we could do more of globally.
Yep.
There's a fun example in Human CEO of Sustainary mentioned earlier that they were doing a project between Sweden and Denmark with Siemens Gamesa. Now, Siemens is a German company, and Gamesa used to be a Spanish company. And so you're thinking, why Denmark? Well, it turns out that they make windmills, and that those two, Siemens Gamesa has actually got lots of factories in Denmark that they bought because those factories were making windmills. That 20 years ago, there were, I think it was 5 big competing Danish companies in that sector. As it matured, it was bought up by But so these big industrial companies are here because of the historical growth of the windmill business, which 20 years ago was still just this little thing over in the corner. Now it provides most of our power here in Denmark.
I just want to add something about the impact economy or the investors. I think that what we have seen, I think this is from Sweden, but I think it's the same all over, that we have more money that want to invest, but we don't have enough companies that are investable. That's why we are doing the impact startup for just one example. And I think what we need is exactly a little bit what you were talking about, to also to talk about what the value is, that the value is profit through all money, but it's also value for so much, so many other things. As an employer branding, for example, or your marketing, whatever. But if you see now a lot of investments are going much better when you actually invest in the sustainable companies than vice versa.
Bringing the money in,
yeah,
right, is a really, really important area. The investors to start with, it is looking at the business models, it is, like Thomas is doing with trees, where, oh, we're not doing this because it feels good, we're doing this because we make money. If you look at most countries now, they're putting in windmills, not because let's save the planet, but, okay, let's save the planet while we make a lot of money. People are taking their investments out of oil because they can see, we're not going to make a lot of money there. The price is dropping, demand is dropping. In this investor readiness, we had a quick talk about this before, that we need to maybe find, the investors need to develop. Norsken is an example. We've got one example there at the angel level in these early stages, when we go from somebody taking Apple products and turning that into leather. That is a really, really early stage idea to begin with, but somebody took a bet on her. Where do we find those investors? How do we develop those investors?
I think we are doing, actually, we're planning now within the Impact Startup an investor lab to actually invite investors from all over the Nordic countries to, it's not an education, it's just an information that what's it's all about and where you actually can put in your money and actually get profit from it. And we had a demo day this September for the companies that were in our Impact Startup program, and all the investors were so impressed. They were actually, invited because probably they said yes because they knew us. But once there, they were so impressed, and they were like, okay, these are actually companies that they are ready for investments. They are already there. This is more than I don't know what they expected, actually. But when I was talking to one of the investors, he said, we need to know more about this, because this is interesting. This is, and I would say, even though it's money, of course, that will attract them, but having that this is impact first as well, because then you will always stay on track and not being where the money goes. You are there, and you will make money on that.
So this part of this is, let's say, is expanding, let's say, the investor skills, the numbers that they look at. If we think of, Kim, you and I have talked about tech startups forever, and CAC, and there's all sorts of numbers you're looking at there, and MMR, MRR, et cetera, but that. So which numbers matter? In sustainability, we've got an issue of teaching the investors new numbers, and in some cases looking for a new investor profile, right? That in tech, just the standard thing is middle-aged men. Boom, and we see, one investor in 20, if not one investor in 50 is a woman. And yet when it comes to a lot of the sustainability, they actually know the products better than your average male investor who comes from a finance or a consultancy industry background.
So it's few women investing and few women that gets the investments. And we know that a good advice is to invest in a female company because it's much safer, much safer. So we do that.
But a couple of let's get a couple more angles on this. Are you getting more women investors than in early stage stuff?
Actually, when we look at the demographics of at least our individual clients, we have a slight majority of women. And that's not a surprise, in a way.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also feel that women are more interested in this. For us, and in regards to what do investors need to know, we are working with a plant. It's like the future is green, and we need to have more plant-based products. So then the investor also needs to understand that this is nature we're dealing with. It's a plant, it's temperature. So we can't have exit so fast, so early. The investor needs to dare to have the exit further away, because you might have 1, 2, or 3 bad seasons, but you still need to push it forward. And also the other thing is that we need to have much more tech and bio together, like ag tech, food tech, because we need to really reinvent the agriculture with all the good tech that is out there already. That's how I see it. So.
Well, Warren Buffett said, you know, the famous American investor, he said he wouldn't invest in something he couldn't understand. And I was thinking, yeah, all right, well, if women know more about sustainability, products, companies, services, there's a good opportunity there.
But I think if you want to talk about the positive side of what's going on, I think technology is that far now and developing that exponentially fast that these bridges you're talking about, you know, bridging software, hardware with bio, with food, it's naturally happening because the research is already happening. And what you're talking about, educating the investors, I think that's about it. Like you can approach this problem as anything else. You have to create a new textbook and you have to create a new story.
Yep.
So I think for all the people that I met around events and traveling around, these investors are out there, but they don't have a textbook and there's not that many role models. So I think on the positive side, I think if you educate the investors, the technology is there.
Yeah.
So you're talking about that it's now better to invest in non-oil than oil. And that's only because of technology. You know, that development is there, so now we just need to drag the rest.
Everything raw oil can do,
well,
hemp
you know
fiber
what I
can
love?
do.
Exactly. This is, if you're watching this online, you need to be here next year, because what you're going to miss out on is that we actually, because of time, have to stop this, but we're going to get to keep arguing, discussing over a cup of coffee afterwards. And if you were here, you'd be able to join that conversation, but you can't. So, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you guys.
Thank
this
you.
was really good fun.